This is by far the most important time of the year to go through these 10 keys for success. It's going to help you a lot throughout the preseason because when you're mucking around picking your teams, and a lot of people have already set up their squads and have made 4 or 5 drafts already. So if you can think of these 10 things whilst putting together your squad, it's going to really help you just set up the correct squad. And we know how important starting off well is, something that I didn't do last year. And I made a few mistakes and have learnt from them, and very much so, I hope. And if you feel like I am making any of those mistakes again this year, please pull me up and pull any of your mates up as well. And just have a think of these things yourself when you're getting ready to create your side. So first off, guys, the biggest thing here is, in no particular order, is to playing the schedule early. I think is a big mistake because team form is just way too volatile, unfortunately. And that really was in play last year. A lot of us thought Dolphins weren't going to be great. They started incredibly well. We also thought the Roosters there were going to be pretty good and had a really, really nice start to the season. That wasn't to be, and I made some issues and some mistakes myself in my starting team with guys like Suoli'i and playing out of position as well, and that was something that didn't fare very well. That's something actually to add in as well, is guys playing out of position, even if they have scored fairly well in the past, sometimes it doesn't work out well. You think Egan Butcher at the start of the season, you think Joseph Suoli'i there definitely as well, so that is something to think about. But we also had the Cowboys, who we thought had a fairly comfortable draw, and they started pretty poorly. And the teams that they came up against actually played pretty well. And for the most part, Cowboys lost plenty of games across that first part of the season. And they got better and they worked it out eventually. But most of the time, unless you are, even for the most part, Panthers, they had a pretty tough start to the season as well. They weren't playing to their best either. So most teams don't come out of the block super hot, and that's something to keep in mind. Just look at the players' role and look if they've done it pretty comfortably, pretty regularly in the past. And if they have done that, then that's going to be a much easier opportunity for them to predict their future success, which is going to be cool. So think about that, number one, in that one there. Number 2, a dominant playmaker is undefeated. And we look at Sean Johnson last year, and we really have never seen him in that type of role where he is the absolute dominant kicker, as well as having his really good running game. And then, pair that in as well with a team that was super successful this year on the back of him. And he obviously had his best year of his career, I should say. Did super well, but him next to a player that doesn't kick too much is going to be super duper impressive. We also saw that with guys like Tanner Boyd at the Titans, so playing next to Foran. Foran doesn't kick too much in that one there, which is super helpful for him, and that showed that even when he had some quieter games there, that he was able to bounce back and have big kick meter games. Obviously, just kick meters, tackles, and the like there is super helpful for their scoring, and just gives you some consistency with their scoring as well. And then if they get any attacking stats on top of that, the odd offload, the odd tackle break, and some running there, it can be really, really beneficial to them. So if any players this year get that type of role, look at someone like Jamal Fogarty. He might end up in that type of role where he is the goal kicker. He's going to be kicking in general play plenty. So just to go along with his tackles and some odd attacking stats from there, he could be absolute gold. And we see that with, Cleary, for the most part, gets the majority of the kicking. Luai does take a little bit. With Hines as well, you'll see Trindle take a little bit. With Moylan in the past, he was very limited on his kicking, so that helped Hines as well. So for the most part, guys, look at those types of players, and you'll see that helps them immensely to score really well, be consistent, and make you a lot of money and score well. Number 3, fullbacks and fullbacks over the centers and the wingers is what that one was meant to be there. Fix that while we're here. Beautiful. All right, so with those guys there, the big thing in that one is you're getting plenty of run meters. A lot of the time you're getting the attacking stats to boot with that one. And that's something that centers and wingers, especially if their team doesn't go too well, is something that they can find hard to achieve in that one. And then the centers and the wingers, they can get their missed tackle numbers up there as well. And for the most part, if you can get a fullback in that wing fullback slot, if you can get a fullback in the center slot, then that's going to be very, very helpful to you in the cash generation, obviously with those cheapies and the like, but also just getting some consistent scoring, which the centers and the wingers can usually find it fairly hard to get. So always look towards fullbacks over the centers and the wingers in that one. Pretty simple. Number 4, don't get cute in the hooker position. Just pick Harry Grant. Last year, that was very, very clearly the play. You could have went for a second or a third option there with guys in the mid-range, also in the cheap. Obviously, Brandon Smith was one of those guys where most people picked him up, and he got injured, unfortunately, and just never really got to the heights that we were hoping from him. But we know that Harry Grant is the best player in the position each and every year. We had guys like Damien Cook come up and play very similar quality in fantasy to him, but over the last bunch of years, and you'd imagine going forward that Harry Grant is going to be that guy. The big reason I'm pointing out the hooker position is that you only have one option in your starting 13, whereas all the others you can have multiple, and there's different ways you can go about it. You could have the third best player in the mids, mixing that in with a few value guys and maybe a cheapie. Whereas that hooker position, if you get that wrong, you could be 20 points behind straight away. Number 5, be quick to act when a talented youngster gets an opportunity. Each and every year, we see these guys that we hear about very, very regularly. I always talk about the Jack Birds, the Ewan Aitkins, these types of guys there. When they get their opportunity to come in, they really score well. You even see guys like Tyrone Munro at a point last year. Even though he was a winger, he was able to come into a fairly decent side and score pretty well. And you see here, he actually comes into this season a little bit undervalued based on his average, and that's just based on the fact that he didn't play too many games. But these outside backs are even doing well. You imagine what it's like when a forward comes in and gets an opportunity, and we look at Jacob Preston and what he did last year. So there's some decent raps on Preston and his ability there. His ability to tackle hard, run hard, and without missing too many tackles. And if you get into a team that kind of needs someone to really step up and help the squad out, and that really played out with the Dogs with a couple of injuries and obviously their lackluster forward pack. Preston was able to do that. So just be ready to act. And it's fine if you do miss them for a week and you just want to watch and see how they go. It could be the fact that they might have, like Preston, he ended up off the bench in round 1 last year, but we kind of knew that he would, if he played well, he'd make his way into the team. So you can watch the week or two. You can also start with them if they have plenty of raps on them in that sense. Number 6, forwards and halves, cash cows, I should say, over outside backs as well. I know I said covers, good work. You're going to have a laugh at me there. Forward and halves cash cows over the outside back. So we know that scoring is so much higher for those guys. And we saw last year, even guys like Matt Dury didn't score super well, but still averaged around that 30 mark and made a bit of cash. And that was he was kind of a dud cash cow, but he still did okay. You didn't have any of those guys like the Tommy Talaus that came in and just really stunk it up for the entirety of the year. You saw Bryce Cartwright come in and do that. You saw, what Braden Trindle could do at the start of the season for 3 or 4 weeks there. You had Jack Cogger come in and do awesomely well there as well. So they're just some very simple guys that can come in and make a big difference to your scoring and your cash generation very early. But whereas it's very, very difficult for an outside back, unless you're an absolute superstar fullback, we might see like Failonga or something like that this year. They could come in and make bulk cash early, or a Dream Buller at points. But again, they are fullbacks and they have to play out of their skin to score anywhere near the likes of the forward and also the halves cash cows in what you saw with Trindle, with Cogger, with Bryce Cartwright, with Jacob Preston. These types of guys that very easily can come out and score well from the jump. And if you miss out on those types of guys, that can really cost you. Whereas you can watch an outside back for a week or two and they're never really going to hurt you too much. They could play out of their skin and get a 40 and a 50, and you could jump on if you wanted to after that. Whereas the other guys, they could get 50 odd and 60 odd in the first few weeks, and that's a little bit harder. They've gained that little bit more cash, unfortunately, already. Number 7, starting team and the bye period wins the comp. So what I mean by that, guys, is picking the correct cash cows, the correct guns, and the correct value plays for the most part. Obviously, you're not going to get all of them right. That's going to be the best way to go about doing it really well in this competition, and obviously winning the bye period as well. So if you get the starting team right, you won't have to trade as many times in that first sort of 6 to 8 weeks. And therefore you could save, that 3 or 4 trades or something like that you could use during that bye period to make sure that you get the 13 on the park in the major bye weeks, and make sure that you get close to that 17 as well in the minor bye weeks. And if anything comes up, concussions, injuries, and the like there, or call-ups to Origin, which there was plenty of that last year, that you can foresee that potentially happening and have the ability to make changes according to that in your team and use those extra trades that you have saved. So that's a really important part there. If you get those 2 right, you are well on your way to absolutely winning and dominating the competition. 3 to go, guys. Number 8 there, don't be afraid to follow the crowd. Just don't be late. So with that one there, pods, fairly overrated. So for the most part, the reason they are a point of difference player, so a player that not many people own there in that fact for those that are new to this, is most likely because they aren't scoring as well as the guys that are well picked and a higher ownership there. So don't be afraid to follow the crowd there, because there are going to be guys that, every team's going to be different, and you will have a couple of your guys in your team that if you can outdo the next guy by 10 or 15, they could be 10% owned instead of like 40% owned, and they are a little bit of a point of difference guy for you, even though they're owned by 10%, not 3 or 4% in that sense there. So with that one, don't be afraid to follow the crowd. So if you jumped on Sean Johnson in the first few rounds last year, you got ahead of sort of the guys that picked him up a couple of rounds after that, and you picked up those couple extra cash generation opportunities and couple extra really, really good scores, and that puts you ahead. So you might miss out on that first good score, but don't jump on them in round 3 or 4 rounds later. Jump on them in that second round. That's going to be super important for you to go well this year in NRL Fantasy in 2024. Number 9 there, make sure your captain is a top 3 scorer in the game. No lower, in my opinion there, apart from when it is Origin time. So that first sort of 10 rounds or so, I really don't think you can captain anyone else other than a Cleary, a Hines, or a Haas. Anything lower than that, and you're leaving sort of 5 to 10 points on the table, in my opinion there. So really, I think you've at least got to have one of those 3 guys. Haas is likely to score pretty well in the mid-60s as well. Cleary and Hines at just over 70 plus, and I don't really see too many others being able to hit those heights on a consistent basis. And that's what you're looking for here, consistently scoring 65 plus for your captain so you can get those double points. Pretty easy on that one there. And our last one, number 10, guys, is expect the unexpected there. Really, the biggest part of that point is that there's always going to be concussions. There's always going to be injuries. The guys that get, as I said, pushed up into Origin, be ready to loop at all times as well. So those 2 things together, the unexpected can happen, and one of your guys that you expect to hit a 23 and you're like, I won't be looping him. He could end up with a double, or there could be an injury or 2 and he has to play big minutes in that game. So with that guy, make sure he's in a correct looping position. Don't miss out on any of those loops. Make sure you're ready to use it at any opportunity, because that can cost you dearly. Something that I did fairly well last year, and is a reason why I end up at 101st. I think that my looping was so much better than the year before. I believe I left a few points on the table in 2022, which I didn't leave out there in 2023. The only reason I didn't go close to winning the comp last year, I think, was my starting side, and fixing that up this time and starting much better can really put myself and you guys on the path for NRL Fantasy 2024 overall glory, I think, there as well. We will get into plenty around head-to-head thoughts there, guys, and strategies around that. So it's obviously not too dissimilar to the 10 keys to success here. Really, it's just that buy period that kind of changes here, but all of these things work out well for that. You don't want to miss out on those cash cows. You don't want to take them too late, and you want to get good point scoring so you can get early wins on the board and kind of set yourself up into a good top 4 position in your head-to-head competitions. But they are my 10 keys to success in NRL Fantasy for 2024, guys. I hope that really helped you out. I'm sure there's a few more from there, but that were just 10 cool ones I thought were super helpful, and I hope you enjoyed it, and I'll catch you in the next video.